this family like escaped this one paradigm, which was like Soviet oppression,
Right.
and they firmly believed that the West was going to solve all their problems because it was the antithesis to that. They were like, this is the solution. And so that created this, for me, it seemed like an extreme faith in the West that I hadn't really encountered in my own upbringing, or really in other Americans in general, because most Americans are kind of looking at stuff like, what's going on here? And so anytime that you voice any concern that the established powers, authorities, institutions are dropping the ball in any respect, I think there's a lot of blowbacks. It's like, whoa, well, this is America. Like, they're not the Soviet Union. They're not that bad. Like, they can't be, how, come on. Like, so there's just like extra level of trust in the ideals and the institutions and
I mean, social construct of the West, right? I mean, so like they all work in California. They all have high tech jobs. And so my siblings are both in relationships, and their significant others also work in tech. My aunt on my dad's side, that entire family is in tech. We have family like in Australia, all in tech. Like everybody's a really technical person. And they have this like, there's basically an understanding of the fact that like, look, the world is good. You work hard, you get a job, you make lots of money, and that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I really departed from everybody because I was like, I don't think that's the point. I don't think that's the point. I don't think that being on top of the pile is the point. I don't think that making a lot of money is the point. I think that that's actually what keeps you away from the point. And I struggle with this because I'm like, how do you survive in a world that is centered on money as a motive force if you also recognize that it's not the point and seems to distract people from living in many ways? And so I think that on that level, I'm very distant from my family. And I think that that's probably the main point of distance.
Is it because you're examining this subject and they're living within it, but not examining it?
I would say so. Like, I think it's like it's not a conversation that can be had. Like we can talk about pretty much anything, but this isn't and it's not even that there's like an aggressive immune response. There's just this sort of like, we don't talk about it. Like, we don't talk about it.
And that's the line between belief and ideology to me. Ideology is something that is the air around you. You don't see it, you don't think about it, you just believe it. And it would be uncomfortable to be like, there's air particles around you right now, and you're going through them, and there's a different blend of whatever it is. It makes people uncomfortable. I don't like to think about it as much. To me, that's what I think I'm hearing about, and that becomes particularly interesting to me, to talk about the things that are unquestioned. It's super difficult for people because it then begins to overwhelm them. It could lead to questioning things that you rely upon, systems that you rely upon to live, to live every day. Because imagine if your dad, for instance, Stas, opened up to the idea that money and competition and capitalism or whatever it is just something he's doing and keeping himself busy, and there's a lot of good that comes from it, including taking care of his family, but that there's a larger meaning that money may contribute to that is less examined. That could become very uncomfortable, I think, because it could point to a need to change his entire orientation if it's not in line with those unthought about, deeper meaning concepts that he has within him. Now, I don't know any of this, but I'm just trying to introduce the idea, because this is where disagreement becomes difficult, because people can't even talk about things that are, you know, ideological a lot of the time, or at least pretty deep.
Mm-hmm. My sort of my immediate thoughts are twofold. The first is that my dad had this fantasy as a youth, and I think that he still entertains it, of basically turning his back on everything and becoming a merchant marine on a container ship.
Mhm.
Like, right, he has this fantasy of what it could have looked like otherwise.
Uh,
And so on some level, I think that he sees what Shiloh and I are doing. And on one hand, he's absolutely terrified for us because, you know, he's a grown-ass man who understands that money is vital for being able to survive.
mhm.
And we make very little of it.
And we make yet we make very little of it yet. And so he's worried, understandably so, justifiably so. But then on the other hand, I'm sort of like, I think that there are values that you hold so deeply and so dearly that you choose that you will fight for them no matter what the situation is. And then there are other things where you're like, look, I know you have a different ideology than I do, and I simply have to accept that that's how you are and not try to change you. I'm certainly going to continue living the way that I live. And we basically, there's like a détente, right?
Mhm.
We each live as we live. And that's the sort of, and that's where the peace lies.